What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Supermicro computer stock, ticker symbol SMCI, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Monday, March 25th. Alright guys, SMCI stock on Friday finished the day up $1.13 a share. That's plus 0.12%. It is down about 6-7 points here in the after hours, but listen, as always, after hours movement must be taken with a grain of salt when volume is low, and volume was certainly low on Friday. So take that movement with a grain of salt, whether you're short or it's going against you. But let's get started here. So what I want to do is first start with our daily ritual, the volume profile analysis here on the 5-minute chart. We're going to try to pull out as much bias as we possibly can using the volume profile, and then I want to look at levels, psychological levels, right? And then also try to utilize the options to pull out some more bias, both volatility bias, the expectation, the expected move, and directional bias. Listen, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. And let's dive in here. So let's circle up the moves that I primarily want to look at here from Friday. I want to look at this pop and drop and then a little bit of recovery that we saw here on Friday. And then I'm also interested in this slow fade to quick pop into the close. So let's take a look at the correlating volume profiles on these. Now, what's really interesting is, if you take a look here, we actually did see a little bit of ascending volume on those bullish bars, and then that quickly faded upon the pullback. Okay, now ideally, I would have liked to see consistently elevated volume upon the pop after the pullback. We weren't able to get that, but there is a slight amount of bullish bias there on that portion of the move, peeling back the onion, right? The volume profile I typically like to think of as a separate entity compared to the actual, price movement itself. And then if we take a look at the later part of this move, you can see here that we did see about 7 consecutive red candles. However, the volume is very contextual compared to the buying volume, I suppose the volume on the green bars that does surround that. So there's really no bias there that we can pull out, even given the 7 consecutive red bars. Now let's move on to the self-fulfilling prophecy psychological levels here on Supermicro Computer that I'm taking a look at come Monday. Now you can see here on Friday on the 30-minute chart, the 50 period and the 200 period that are forming a channel. That channel has now tightened down substantially. The stock has faded below the 50 period in the after hours, but listen, again, I'm always taking after hours with a grain of salt, so we closed inside of that channel. There's going to be a decision made here on Monday. Bulls, ideal scenario, I'm looking to utilize that 50 period ideally as kind of a trampoline, stay above that level in the intraday session, right, which means get back above it, since we did fade below in the after hours. And then on high volume, use that 50 period for a push upside through the 200 period, a slow fade, really on low volume ideally, and then boom, a hard high volume confirmation holding the 200 period as a short-term support level to push us to the upside of that channel. Now bears, we're currently beneath both of these moving averages. Again, just self-fulfilling prophecy levels. That's the only reason I care. Bears, ideally, going to want to sit beneath that 50 period. Any upside test, I don't mind what volume we tested on, as long as during the intraday session we see a high volume rejection away from that region. Okay, I don't tend to trust breaks or holds for that matter, pre-market or after hours, just because volume is very low. Okay, now the 4-hour, let's take a look here. You can see that we're currently in between that 50 period and 200 period. Now, Supermicro is a volatile name, but we are about 7.8% away from that 50 period and about a 10.6% downside move to that 200 period. Now, the one thing I will say here on the 4-hour, since the daily is going to tell us a much more relevant story, what I want to see here on the 4-hour, if I'm a bull or a bear, is ideally I want to see a flattening out of both the 200 period and the 50 period. Now, if I'm a bear, I would want to see this 200 period flatten out ahead of 900 and that 50 period continue downside through 1,000. Okay, understanding that that may take some time. It's unlikely to occur, at least the 50 period on Monday. And if I'm a bull, I want to see that 200 period continue to ascend at as aggressive of a pace as possible, with the 50 period, the white line, right, flattening out before it gets down as low as $1,000 a share, because we don't need any additional psychological barriers punching through 1,000, right? I want that 50 period above 1,000. If I'm a bull, I don't want another problem sitting at 1,000, because 1,000 is already a massive enough level. And bears, for you guys, you want that sitting below 9 for the same reason, because 9 is obviously a big psychological level as well, which brings us here to the daily, which tells the most important story here come Monday, the story of the psychological actual levels that I'm watching the most carefully come Monday. Now listen, the moving averages here on the daily are not really all that relevant. The closest one is the 50 period, and that's currently sitting at about 770. But listen, the story here on the daily is quite obvious, isn't it? Right, the story to me is Monday's kind of a battle for $1,000 a share. Now, as far as the closing price is concerned, right, approximate closing price, we're currently less than 3% away from $1,000 a share. And, you know, Friday was a 0.12% day, essentially flat, right? But the stock has spent the last couple of trading days just ahead of 1,000. So bulls, a big power move come Monday for you guys would be a punch up through 1,000 on slightly above average or as much volume as possible. Really, a back test and a hold of $1,000 a share to prove, okay, we're holding this with a big sample size. That's where that volume comes into play. Whereas bears, for you guys come Monday here, we've been pressing 1,000 for a couple of days now. You guys really need a rejection, because we're kind of just sitting right ahead of it without much of a substantial rejection at all. A bear, you know, even if we see a hard test of 1,000, you guys just want a hard, high volume downside rejection. Ideally get down through 950. Just put another small psychological level in between the stock and $1,000. Now, implied volatility here is currently sitting in kind of the mid-range in comparison to the last 3 months or so. Just understand, those of you holding options, if we do continue to see IV fall, if we continue to see that come lower, that does suck a little value out of out of contracts in general, which negatively impacts you if you purchased them, if you're on the buy side, right? Which means that if IV continues to fall, you'll have to outrun that with your delta move. So just understand that risk if you are trading options. Now, the expected move on Monday, okay? The next expiration on Supermicro is Thursday, March 28th. And that has an expected move being priced in of plus or minus $82.16 per share, right? That's not, you know, that's actually priced in to the chain at each expiration. It's the one standard deviation range being priced into each expiration by the traders. So it's quite literally the expected move by that expiration. So if we take a look, again, $82.16 plus or minus. If we take a look here, and we look, okay, by Thursday, right, there's no earnings, there's nothing in terms of like an earnings catalyst. Then if we look at this with a very primitive mentality or strategy, and we just divide that by 4 trading days, it seems that the options traders are pricing in more or less approximately $20.54 of movement per day, plus or minus. Now, that in and of itself, just keep in mind, would likely, right, that's kind of assuming like 4 red days in a row or 4 green days in a row. So that being not the most likely scenario, the actual expected movement is likely a little bit higher day to day if we end up having a mix, right, of red and green days. So, you know, having Supermicro getting below 950 or above 1,000 in a single day is certainly, you know, not out of the realm of possibility even a little bit here, at least according to the chain. And by the way, that expected move coming out of the options chain, think of that like the line if you're betting on sports or something similar. That's the big sample size of opinions coming together and essentially pricing that into the chain. Now, whether you think that the actual move, the realized volatility, is going to be more or less than the expected volatility, that's where the opportunity comes in play. Okay? And then the directional bias comes from all the analysis that we did on the charts, as well as this. I just want to show you guys. The options also gives us a directional bias. If we take a look at the total volume, look at this. 233,500 total contracts traded on Friday. as traders position themselves heading into Monday. And we got 140,000 calls, 93,000 puts. So we are seeing a relatively heavy call side bias on the overall ratio. And then those short-term speculators, the 0 to 20 delta range, 73,300 calls, 53,200 puts. Listen, if you want to come get my daily scalp setup alerts, the actual scalp setups that I'm watching each and every day, those get alerted to the group. My swing trade setup alerts as they come around, unusual options activity. I've been tracking that for years. That's how I kind of keep track of what the whales are up to. In-play stock alerts for those of you who are active scalpers like myself, and even my Platinum one-on-one members that I'm working with every day. That link in the pinned comment will allow you to get grandfathered into the Roensch Capital Gold server as early as by Monday's trading day. You can join up instantly. And hey, if you got value out of this video on your way out, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.